Hey everybody, this is Perch. Couple things to explain real quick, and then we'll get into the topic of this video. Um, People reacted. I had a reaction to a tweet from Mags saying, this is a trans girl, and then with photos of Kurt Cobain when Kurt Cobain did that, did a couple shows in a dress for a song. Now, Cobain was neither trans nor I saw some people come in here going, well, he was ultra woke. He was not that either. All of this are people who, Kurt died, nearly 30 years ago. And a lot of the people who are talking were not born then and clearly have no understanding of what actually went on there and kind of the nature of that band. And it's not like that information is readily available everywhere. But it definitely bugs me. And it's bugged me for a long time. And this predates comics for sure. Back in the wrestling community, way back in the day, I remember that there were people who came out of the woodwork to want to use the death of Brian Pillman or Owen Hart to their own advantage. Fortunately, not a lot of people knew how to, take advantage of Chris Benoit's death. Everybody just distanced themselves from that one. But anyway, I have a long-standing irritation, if you want to use 2023 language, trigger for people who use other people's deaths as a means to get attention for themselves. So that bugs me, and I definitely went off on old Mags on there. The people who do that are attention whores. It's an ugly word. That is accurate. It drives me crazy. But stop using it. Look, and especially Kurt's been dead now for, again, nearly 30 years. And dragging something up when, obviously he's not around to defend himself, and neither is, anyone else within his orbit. I don't know. If you lived in Seattle, we already had one shrill, terrible harpy who tried to make her own name off of Kurt. And we all lived through that with Courtney. So the last thing you need is some new schmuck coming along and trying to do that. So anyway, got to get that off my chest. Look, to me, death is sacred in the sense of, it's time you let things go. The person is gone. Using someone's death for your own, promotion is gross. It's one of the lowest forms of character there is, and I have no tolerance for it. Anyway, for the other part of this video, I want to bring to your attention kind of this interesting observation I have. So one of the things that's been going on for quite a long time is this narrative that comics are changing. And there was this post by, our friend Jamal, and he says, here's the rub, kids. No matter how much gnashing of teeth you do, blaming creators, blaming personal politics, whatever, things are changing. Started change with Jeff Kinney and Raina Telgemeier, and all the pandemic did was speed up those expected changes by 5 years. Now, people have done videos on this, so I'm going to give you a different take. By the way, not an opposing take, not an arguing take. Those other takes are just fine. This is a different way of looking at it, but it doesn't negate or change what others have said. It's a different point that's about to be made. And I'll say this at the offset as well. The pandemic did not speed up changes by 5 years. The pandemic slowed things down. If you look at comics and you look at a lot of what was naturally happening in 2019 and 2020, particularly with manga, YA, graphic novels, everything else, the wheels were in motion. And a lot of what happened to comics in terms of the insolvable nature of a lot of these distributors and everything else, it definitely slowed things down, not sped it up. And I don't know where that sped up by 5 years even comes from. That's a very weird take. Anyway, but what I wanted to comment on was not the idiocy of this comic, and it's fine. What I wanted to comment on, and I post this in Twitter, I'll read you a little bit of what I wrote, is the idea that these people who like to tell us that things are changing. Well, no shit, things are changing. I think everybody is aware things are changing. I think one of the ways that this entire debate has gotten massively misconstrued is that the side that likes to post this condescending bullshit like this likes to use this knowledge of no matter how much you want your old 80s comics with your old racist superheroes, things are changing. And that's not really what anyone is asking for. I mean, I'm sure someone. The reality is there's always somebody saying something. I made the comment before of, yes, some of the anti-SJW crowd absolutely are sexist a-holes. There you can, if you dig, you will find it. You can find somebody saying anything everywhere. But nobody is saying that, hey, what we really want out of comics is basically the 1980s lineup of the Avengers never changing. Like, we never want new members there. We never, people are aware of things changing. A lot of people changed from kind of John Byrne era to Todd McFarlane era of comics, of people who, John Romita Jr. on X-Men, Paul Smith moving to Jim Lee. Those are art styles, but the tone of those books changed. The lineup changed. Lots of things change all the time. There's several eras of the X-Men before 1995 where there were more women on the team than men. That is a fact. And the books were selling awesome back then. I forget who, somebody was making the argument like, you can't have too many women on the team or it won't sell well. That's bullshit. And there's proof. The 80s and 90s have tons of proof of books that were selling great, where a majority of the team were women. This isn't a game for, statisticians to say, well, you need, 1/8 women and 3/16, black people and, 1/32 handicap. That's not how you make comics. That's how you make anything. You need good stories. If the story is good, you'll be fine. If the story sucks, you could have all kinds of things in there. You're going to fail because the story sucks. That is the ultimate, ultimate unifier to all this stuff. Good story equals sales. Bad story, bad sales. And when I say story, I'm lumping in writing and art. But anyway, so I wrote this. It says, yeah, kid, because I do hate the condescending. It's always like, hey, kiddies, hey, children, hey, just stop with that bullshit. It's like, we're aware. It's very obvious things are changing. But here's the rub. Change and evolution often isn't controllable. Certainly not by those who never had any meaningful contribution to the world before or have plans for the world after. The point here is, look, the people who are often like to lecture, everyone else about how things are changing, and a bunch of, Neanderthals are dragging their arms hoping for comics from the 80s. The people who are saying that stuff are not producing anything of value. I mean, we like to, and I've made this point before, and I know it's one that can feel like a bitter pill to swallow sometimes, but a lot of the stuff that goes on, a lot of the people that we get really worked up about, and I see people get really frustrated with, and whether it's this writer or that writer, they are not relevant to current comics. And I'm saying it from an unemotional, just blunt perspective. It's like what I've said. Vita Ayala is not relevant to 2023, 2024 comics. Vita is not working in comics. Now, maybe Vita comes back, and then we can all bitch about it. But in 2024, this person has no relevancy. Jamal Igle has no relevancy. He's not part of today. He's not part of tomorrow in comics. He's doing indie comics. If he's happy, more power to him. That's fine. Again, I'm not saying this is a burn or a slam. It just is a fact. Mags has no relevancy to comics right now. It just doesn't. A lot of these people who make noise, I mean, hell, of all the names, probably Heather Antos has more relevancy because there you've at least got an editor making hiring and, line decisions for comics. But the decisions that she's making are for IDW, which is nowhere near the top of relevancy for books in terms of sales or just units or attention or any of that. And she's on Star Trek, which is also not a major comic anywhere. So, I get to, and I think all of us, we get to dismiss these opinions a little bit as coming from people who really do not have any impact. So when somebody is telling you, it'd be a little bit like the guy who unlocks the doors for the New York Stock Exchange, wanting to tell you exactly, what's going on in the market, what the trades are, what you should do. It'd be like somebody like that wanting to lecture you on proper investing. And it's like, yeah, you work in the building, but you don't actually, you're not a main driver there. That doesn't mean you don't get an opinion. Sure, you get an opinion. Everybody gets to have an opinion, and you're welcome to it. But we don't have to take that opinion very seriously, or we can at least give it the context in which it belongs. We certainly don't need to, over-attach value to it, from somebody who wants to tell us about where comics are going. I wrote, and this is another tell for me. If you are talking about where comics are going and you're bringing up Raina Telgemeier, couple things on that. One, Ray is working in YA graphic novels. It is different from superhero books. It is not, it's not everybody went from one to the other. Okay, people did not go from superhero or the YA graphic novels for girls to superhero books. That's not a transition that is happening. Those are two very, very different markets. Both, interesting, relevant, and if you're a company that can play and win in both, hell yes, that sounds great. But in general, those are two different worlds. And Raina has absolutely succeeded, is an absolute beast in this space, does a great job. But there are a lot of names, and Raina's last book was 2017, 2018? It's been a little while, and there's a lot of really big names, people who are doing Babysitter Club and some of those other lines that are selling like gangbusters. So whenever somebody brings up Raina, and only Raina, that tells me they actually do not understand the field they're talking about, because otherwise you'd be bringing up several other names. There's a lot. Sachs, Wyman, Ortega, Lloyd, Nutter. There's a bunch of best-selling, award-winning, rich creators in that space beyond Raina. And just bring up Raina, and also they bring up Raina and Smile. Smile was 2016, I want to say, 15. Again, it's been a while. And they just know this because this is what the talking points said, and everybody is so too lazy to go and update the talking points. There are other creators there who are making money. But again, it's a very different place. But one other thing to kind of draw your attention to, and I'll use one that a woman who has been very successful in that space, who is doing work for Marvel, and that's Rainbow Rowell. Now, Rowell isn't putting up huge numbers at Marvel, but has put up big numbers for YA books. The idea for Marvel to say, let's take this creator who is successful at YA books and put him into, Marvel superhero books, see if we can, make something work there. That's a good idea. That is if you're trying to break into the market, go find somebody who is successful in that space and bring them in versus, hiring schlubs who have never been successful in this stuff or anywhere and trying to get, I beat up on the guy too much, but getting like Jeremy Whitley to try and be your YA strategy is stupid. Getting Rainbow Rowell makes good business sense. Now, that doesn't mean that, that audience is going to fly over to Marvel and start buying comics, but at least there's some logic behind the decision. But the other thing that I'd like you guys to pay attention to is I'll give you this challenge. How many times have you seen Wyman or Telgemeier or Rainbow Rowell or Dav Pilkey? How many times have you seen them on Twitter bitching at customers or saying things like, hey, the world is changing, you incels, you got to change with it, or, your stuff is old and crappy. How many times have you ever seen Raina Telgemeier do that? Or more to the point, because she works at Marvel, how many times have you seen Rainbow Rowell, go after fans? I'll spoil it for you. None. The people who are really successful in these other spaces do not spend their time shitting on fans and telling them that, hey, the world has changed and, you get with it. The old time superhero books are never coming back. Those people don't do that. They don't do that because, one, they're successful and busy. They're confident in what they do because they've been good at it. And they don't need to go, wage war on Twitter with people over, where Marvel comics are going or not going. It's a hard waste of their time to do that. And so they don't. Rainbow Rowell is sweet as hell on social media and typically just promotes the books and things that she's up to. Raina Telgemeier is one of the nicest people you will ever meet. Again, very friendly, very respectful of fans, and never once you're going to see Raina saying something like, let's face it, kids, the books you like are never coming back. Losers do that kind of stuff. People who are not successful in anything. One, they have the time to do this bullshit on Twitter, but also it's just that's such a bitter, salty point of view, and this is somebody desperately trying to glom onto somebody else's relevance. Rainbow Rowell and Raina Telgemeier and some of these others, they don't need to go and flaunt. They don't need to go pretend that they're successful. They're just successful. They just get to enjoy that success. And typically the people who enjoy success are people who are not, bitter, salty old crones who are trying to still pull one over people on social media. Those tend to not be successful people. Putting it a different way, Stephen King was more successful in the past than he is today. Now, everybody would love Stephen King's money and no doubt about it, but going and just being a salty old a-hole on social media is an indicator that something is not going well in their life. I put this in. So let's stop kidding ourselves at loudmouths on Twitter who spend their time owning the incels rather than work hard to grow these new channels or formats, have any part of its success or any place in its future. Change is coming. These people do not have a place in it. That is hard facts. The people who are over and over wanting to explain to you that you don't get, again, which nobody is asking for, you don't get a comic in the 80s with the exact same lineup, creative team, everything else, and nothing can ever change. The people, nobody, first of all, nobody's really saying that, number one. And number two, the people who are trying to rub your face in it or bring that up as some kind of straw man talking point, those people are not part of the future. They're trying to pretend like, hey, I'm already over here in the promised land over here doing the great work in this new, you're stuck in the past like a loser. Yeah, guess what? You are not in the future. In fact, it's the worst of all worlds. You're neither helping the future, but you're not trying to build it. You're not providing any value. You're not doing anything to make it better. And you don't have any place in the old world either because you've been such a dick for so long, nobody wants to deal with you. These are truly the outcasts. People, look, superhero comics will continue. Go ask the Hirokoshi san about My Hero Academia. Does he think superhero genre is dying? I mean, I think his bank account would say otherwise. Superhero comics are going to do just fine. They just need good stories. They need people focused on it. Anyone who's coming in going, well, those days are done. No, the My Hero Academia is like that. That's as close to 1970s X-Men as I've seen anywhere in a long time. The overwrought drama, the subplots, the villain, like all that kind of stuff. Will they, won't they relationship stuff? MHA is, if you like X-Men in the 70s, 80s, I don't know why you're not reading My Hero Academia. You're nuts. Because it could not be more dead on. But anyway, stop being distracted by noisemakers who have no impact beyond complaining anywhere. They don't. We spend a lot of time focusing on people who are not doing anything today. They're lecturing us on how it's going to be tomorrow when they have no place in tomorrow. So what's the point? Anyway. And there's my piece. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Thanks for listening.